Hi, everybody. John Faring here with Live Large Universe, and I have tonight with me my new good friend, MJ Thompson. How's it going, MJ?
I'm good, John. How are you doing?
Very good, very good. So I wanted to just, as we let people come into the show here and come in, we got live viewers that are going to start coming in here over the next minute or so. But I thought it would be a good time just to have a little fun. And I know you and I got to know each other a little bit over Facebook over the last, I don't know, I think year or two, if I remember right, that I started following you. And all of a sudden I noticed that, you were in my comments or in my posts and comments once in a while and kind of supporting me and back and forth. And it caught my attention. And so then I approached you at Heydays, and I think there's a fun little story about me coming in and saying hi to you at Heydays that I think both you and I had a good laugh over. I think we should share with everybody. But before you
That
do,
was so
yeah,
funny.
before you do though, I'm just going to tell anybody who is popping in here is you guys come in the comments, everybody who's watching the show right now, whether you're watching it live right now tonight or if you're watching this as a replay, please go into the comments and let us know where you're watching from. It's to me always super interesting to see how many of the people watching are from Canada, from the US, if so, what province, what state, all of those kind of things too. But yeah, so we've got a fun little story to tell about Heydays. It's kind of a tee up to our bigger conversation tonight, but it was a good laugh, so I thought I'd let you share it. So
It was so funny because I was busy talking with somebody else in the Ski-doo booth, and there's
doing your
this guy
job, right?
working just so he's in my view, and I'm like, who is that? He looks familiar, but who is that? And I didn't quite get it because I think you were wearing a player shirt.
No, no, I was wearing a poster for the Avalanche Alliance sweepstakes. I
No.
was trying to
Oh,
sell some
so what I
sweepstakes tickets to
remember that
everybody.
poster being, or what I thought that poster was at the time, was I thought, sometimes you go to flea markets and stuff, and
Yeah,
guys wear like little posters of a sled they have for sale.
wouldn't put it past me. I mean, it was kind of
I
the
thought
same.
that's what it was. I thought you were like literally wearing like something like, "Hey, I have this for sale."
Yep, it
It
was
was
a good
pretty
time.
funny. I'm like, "Oh yeah, look at that weirdo."
Yeah, yeah, and once you realize that it wasn't just some creep trying to sell you a
No,
Polaris sled in a Skidoo booth, then we got a
exactly.
chance to say hi and we introduced each other. And then I asked you to come on the show, which you graciously said yes for.
Yes. No, thank you. Thank you for having me here. This is
Awesome,
great.
awesome, awesome.
Yeah.
Well, again, as we get going here, I'm going to tell everybody who's in the show live watching, please go in and let us know where you're watching from. So drop it in the comments. Let us know where you're watching from. And if you haven't already, follow MJ on Facebook while we're talking. So MJ, I do have a little business to take care of here too. So just bear with me while I go over this. So I want to let everybody know that if you guys go in here, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. But also, if you share the show out, you will have an opportunity to be entered in to win a drawing that I do. So every show that I do, I track who's sharing it out, and as a thank you for sharing it out, you guys are entered into this drawing. And I've got this harvester handsaw from Mountain Lab. So Mountain Lab is one of the show sponsors, and I want to say thank you to them for supplying us with some cool prizes. But this harvester handsaw is up for grabs just for sharing this out. So get in there, smash the share button, let us know you're here watching, tell them everybody why you wanted them to watch the show too. So introduce them to your new friend MJ, or maybe your old friend MJ, but we'll let everybody do that. And then as you're sharing, come back and check this out. So we actually have, this is funny because this is literally the picture of the sled that I was wearing around my neck at Heydays when I first bumped into MJ here in person. So this is it's a Skidoo show, but this Avalanche Alliance sweepstakes is giving away a brand new Polaris. So MJ, don't worry. A couple of years ago, we gave away a BRP Lynx snowmobile too, and I guarantee you there's a Skidoo in our future. We tend to rotate these sleds over the years, and we'll make sure we get Skidoo back on track here again with giving them away in the next couple of years. So, but yeah, Avalanche Alliance sweepstakes, a $30,000 sled build, all decked out. It's a 850 Polaris Turbo, decked out with Ice Age, SLP, all kinds of goodies on this thing. And that's the grand prize for the sweepstakes. And in the show notes, you guys will see that, there's a link in there for going in and buying sweepstakes tickets. And I've given you guys, don't tell anybody, ahead of schedule, a secret promo code for an additional 30% more tickets that you guys get access to by clicking that link. And it's going to be good from now all the way till November 18th, which is when the Boise Snowmobile Show is. Boise in Idaho, United States. For you Canadians, if you're not sure where Boise's at, it's in Idaho. And we are going to be giving away not only that sled, sled, but we're also going to be giving away this Marlon sled deck. So Marlon, a Canadian company also up in British Columbia, they've donated a sled deck to this sweepstakes. So it's a $6,200 prize. You can get in to win that as well. And then once we give that away, we're going to be giving away, guess what? Artie Cat's in the game too. We got a ZR200 kids snowmobile that we're going to be giving away as part of this prize sweepstakes as well. Again, just go in there, click the link, buy your tickets, get an extra 30% more tickets. Climb has also donated a whole prize pack from everything from a onesie, a monosuit, to a helmet, goggles, boots. We have a avalanche airbag kit. So several $1,000s worth of prizes from Climb as well, and they are going to help us out with that. And then finally, we have Ordovox. So this avalanche rescue set, we have their transceiver, we have their shovel, their probe, and an Ordovox avalanche pack that we're going to be giving away as part of the prize. And so, wow, lots of cool things. I'm guessing that's probably in the neighborhood of about $50,000 to $60,000 worth of prizes. Maybe I'm horrible at math, but man, it's adding up fast when we get into this. And guess what? All of the money that we raise with this sweepstakes is going to go to avalanche centers across the United States, and they can apply for grants against the money that's there to help with things like weather stations, forecasting, beacon check stations. In your particular area, there's grants that can be had to help the motorized community in your area with your local avalanche center. The other thing we do with the money is we partner with ARI. ARI does motorized avalanche education scholarships. It's a scholarship that actually I started with them, 3-4 years ago now, and it's called the LiveLARGE University Scholarship Program. And you have an opportunity then as a consumer and or a pro-level avalanche instructor to go in, apply for these scholarships that are exclusively for the motorized community as well. So the money's going to good places. Get in there, get your tickets, and let us know how we can help you out. So, MJ, I'm going to close this last picture down, and I'm coming back to you, and let's get going with this interview. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm really good.
Thank you for your patience with the little couple of ads that we had to kind of plug in there.
No problem.
This is awesome. Yeah, so thanks. If you guys missed it, go back and watch the beginning later. We shared a funny little story about how some creepy guy approached her at Heydays with a Polaris around his neck. Turned out it was the Avalanche Alliance Sweepstakes guy and this guy over here going over and saying hi. So it was a fun moment in time. But MJ, I've been following you on, I think it was Facebook mostly. I'm on Instagram a little bit, but Facebook mostly. And I've been following you. And actually, that was one of the things that caused me to reach out to you, was that I thought you handled yourself, very professionally. You're very approachable. You do a hell of a job for Ski-doo as an ambassador, and that stood out in my mind. And so I wanted to kind of reach out to you and see if we can't connect and help share your story a little bit.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Awesome. Can you tell everybody a little bit about who is MJ? So what do we need to know about MJ? Where does MJ live? And give us the Cliff Notes version of MJ, and then we'll go into the rest of the story tonight. So,
well, I'm a Ski-doo ambassador,
awesome.
And I'm unique in the sense that I represent trails.
Awesome.
So I think that's amazing that they have an ambassador to represent trails, and there's a few of us out there.
Yeah.
I ride in Ontario. I live 2 hours north of Toronto and ride a lot in northern Ontario and in northern Quebec.
Very good.
And I have like decades of experience in like snowmobiling. It's kind of crazy. I raced pro snowcross for 10 years.
Cool.
I retired from doing that and started this business that I have distributing obsolete snowmobile parts to the BRP Ski-doo dealer network.
Yeah.
And I just have lots of oodles of technical support and vintage history and all that jazz. Something that's really strange about this whole situation is I actually have a chemistry and an engineering degree.
That's cool.
You don't need those.
Well, it's like most people. They go to college and then they do everything except for what their degree is for, right? Isn't that how the world works? It seems like.
I did work. I did work
you?
as a piece of chemist for a long time, and then I discovered racing.
It's like Ricky Bobby in the Talladega Nights movie. I just want to go fast, Bommy. I'd want to go fast.
Yeah. Then I discovered racing. So that was 10 years of my life, and now I'm a really avid trail rider. I ride a lot of trails, and I'm just flattered that Ski-doo has me on board to represent them.
Yeah, so, that's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, and I'll just call this out as a lot of my regular kind of guests and as a lot of my regular audience are kind of Western mountain riders, is for sure. But I've shared many times on this show that I personally am from the Midwest, and I've kind of grew up riding trails, and that was kind of my bread and butter most of my life. And it's really only been the last 10, maybe 15 years that I've been able. I think it was 2007 when I did my very first ever mountain ride. But even from 2007 to 2011, 12, I still mostly trail rode, and then I did like a trip or two to the mountains. And then
Yeah.
now that I've moved out to Washington in 2012, the last 10, 11 years have been almost exclusively mountain riding. But don't tell anybody. I still secretly would love to plan a day where I just go back and ride trails, because for us in the mountains that have never truly ridden a trail sled,
Hmm.
they have no concept of what they're missing. Like in their mind, here's what they think. Like I'm going to tell you, I'm going to call it out because
Okay. Okay.
I've lived both. So here's what they think. They think that why would I want to ride trails? Trails are so crazy. Like, it's but here's what they're comparing. They're thinking of them riding their mountain sled that handles like a stinking school bus, on the trails, and they think that's what trail riding is. Like, no, 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 no. Like trail riding, it's
Two.
it's it's like, think of go-kart racing, right? Like think it's to me that's what it is. It's like go-kart
Yeah.
racing where it's flat, it's planted, the track is short, it's a little bit loose. It's almost like a feeling of drifting a little bit, and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And you get a different type of excitement and adrenaline than you do mountain riding. That frankly, I miss it. I want to go back and do it at some point, but it seems like whenever I make my trips back to the Midwest, it's rarely in the wintertime. It's usually summer months or that kind of thing. So,
Yeah.
wh-
I love motorcycles, so I always think of it as
oh, there you
like
go.
motocross, which would be like more like maybe mountain riding,
Yep.
and then you have sport bikes, and
Yep.
sport bikes are like our trail riding. It's just
True story.
unbelievable.
Yeah, that's a great analogy as well too.
And when
Because
I ride in northern Quebec, there's some trails that we're on the snowmobile, and it's like I dream it's just the ultimate sport bike trail
oh,
while I'm
yeah,
riding it on my Skidoo.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
it's
That's awesome.
amazing. I love it.
Well, and we've covered a couple different parts of the sport of snowmobiling, and I think that's kind of our core topic for tonight. And you and I, and it's not uncommon that this happens where like I reach out to a guest and I don't always have something specific in mind that I want to talk about, and I always leave it up to the guest. Like, well, what do you want to talk about? And sometimes the guest is like, I don't know, it'd be fun to do a show, but I'm not sure what I want to talk about either. And then we just start brainstorming back and forth, and ultimately what we came up with is this idea that you shared with me of like, I think what would be a cool topic to talk about is this idea of snowmobiling as a community and how it takes the entire community, even beyond snowmobilers, to make it work, right? And you kind of started talking me through this concept of like what you meant, and the ideas just started flooding out of like the conversation. And I think what would be cool is to walk everybody through kind of like some of these concept ideas. And real quick before we do that, like we
Yeah.
have a good audience here watching now live, and I'll just ask you guys, like, if you haven't already, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Don't forget to share the show out, and let's get some like buttons and some love buttons going on. We want to cheer MJ on here as we get going on, and
I
appreciate you
want
guys
to know
going.
who out there has vintage sleds too.
Oh, question. That's a question for the audience. That's
Yeah.
audience participation right now. Again, doesn't matter if you're watching live or if you're watching the replay. Same question stands. Do any of you ride vintage sleds? Can I answer first, quick, like while they're typing in their answers?
You can.
I don't currently ride vintage sleds, but I started out riding vintage sleds. It was kind of, probably I'm old enough that it didn't feel very vintage back then. They were probably,
Yeah.
what, 10 or 15 years old, which that's just like
Mhm.
an old sled. That's not vintage at that time. But when I was in my adolescence to teens, I was riding early 1970s snowmobiles, old iron nowadays, we'd call it, right?
Perfect. Yeah.
And similar to some of the machines I've seen in your pictures that we shared out. So,
Well, and it all goes back to there's so many different ways to enjoy the sport. You have
amen.
mountains, you have fast trail riding, you have families out there riding,
100%.
you have people on vintage sleds.
Yep.
And some of my best days are riding vintage. I love it.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's so
Yeah.
cool to be able to do that. It's no different than going to like a classic car show, right? Like we all drive our current modern cars around all day long, but how cool is it to
Don't
be able to go
always
to?
better.
I know, right? But we always go to a
I'm so addicted.
classic car show to admire like the old iron, if you will, right? And I've been to a few of these vintage shows, whether it be at a snow show, like in Washington over the years, we've had a vintage category displays, and a lot of the snow shows they do actually have a vintage group there. And then I've been at events around the state of Washington here too, where there's just vintage gatherings and get-togethers and stuff where they actually get together and do some rides and some little races and stuff. It's kind of fun.
Oh, so much fun.
Yep,
So
yep.
much fun. When you get on a vintage snowmobile, it's like anarchy. Like you take everything you think you know about riding and just like, woo!
Yep. Yep. That's awesome.
Crazy.
That's
So yeah.
awesome. Awesome. Well, let's dive into some of these topics of like, what do you mean by a community? Like, we've got these different buckets in there too. And you and I went through this list, and I'll kind of read them in the order that we have them listed here. But let's talk first about kind of, the mother and father of snowmobiles, right? The OEMs, the manufacturers, right? Like the people who are literally making our snowmobiles. What responsibility do manufacturers have, or what do they do for our sport, and how do they need to participate in this sport? Some of the stuff's obvious, some of the stuff may not be super obvious. So let's talk through that part.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of people may not really understand how involved they actually are. So, in addition to them making snowmobiles for almost anyone's needs, like they really do have that covered.
Yep.
Like we have youth, we have utility, we have performance, we have race, we have deep powder, we have everything we need there. But they also take it a step further, and they're doing everything they can to ensure the sport is available for us in the future.
Yeah.
And that's something they've done right from the very beginning. Like if you go back to the 1960s, all we had was little individual trail networks that weren't connected.
Yeah.
And Ski-doo, for one, took an active interest in joining those trail networks. And they came out with funding programs and whatnot to help us get the trail system we have today. And they called that Snow Plan. They called that whole thing Snow Plan. And they promote it. They
Nice.
did a whole bunch of stuff like that. So now, in the last 3 years, what they brought back is Snow Pass. So they're
Okay.
doing the same thing again with that. So that's pretty cool, where they're giving out grants to snowmobile clubs.
Yeah, I've seen that actually, and one of our local clubs actually has benefited from that. I think the Snowjammer Snowmobile Club has applied for a grant, and the number I heard was like $5,000 they earned to be able to use for things like trail maintenance and projects and all that kind of stuff. So
$5,000, and in the last 2 years they've given out. They just gave out more than 1 million. They just hit the 1 million mark.
yeah, and I would echo what you already said is that, and that was part of our pre-show conversation was this idea that I think the manufacturers, a lot of them, Skidoo's one of them, but like a lot of the
Mhm.
manufacturers are participating in supporting and funding many different organizations within our sport. Things like the International Snowmobile Manufacturers Association. That's a collective group
Exactly.
of snowmobile manufacturers like Ski-doo that are supporting many things, including things like you said, trail grants, working things, land access issues,
Yes, because
non,
it's through ISMA that you're also getting your
yeah,
parliament and your Congress lobbied through to recognize this
yep,
as something as economically viable and important that people really want to stand up for.
yeah,
So, yeah, so ISMA is important that way, which is the International Snowmobile Manufacturers Association, and
okay.
that too's been around probably since the 70s there.
Yeah, yeah, that didn't just happen by accident. That was very much a thoughtful thing
Mhm.
by the manufacturers to come together under the name of the sport, right? And to be able to do the same thing as, in some cases they're doing today, where they're partnering at major events like Heydays. They're all showing up together. Even Avalanche Alliance. We have multiple brands and manufacturers. We've given away, BRP snowmobiles. We've given away Arctic Cat snowmobiles and Polaris snowmobiles and different things like that. They've all come together to support, general concepts that are good for the overall sport, like safety or just trail access. So.
Exactly, and same with safety. Like we have manufacturers now giving out free avalanche training.
Oh, nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yep, very much
And the
so.
super cool thing is, I feel so proud to be associated with Skidoo because they're the one that initiated that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, like if we're going to send people out there, we better make sure they're prepared.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we had our Skidoo class, I think, just a week ago on the 24th here in Washington State,
Yeah,
down at my dealer, Clemson Club Power Sports. Mike Duffy was in town and did the awareness class down there.
nice.
So
Yeah,
very
cool.
good. Cool.
Very good.
Anything
Very
else
good.
in manufacturers you want to touch on before we move?
No, another thing that ISMA that did come out of the
Okay.
ISMA was the Take the Pledge, and that
Oh,
was
that's
something
right.
we
Yep.
probably saw a lot of in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And it was across all the manufacturers,
Yep.
and we all did the
I
Take the
took the
Pledge.
pledge. You
I
took the pledge. We took the pledge.
Yeah.
Oh,
So, just to recognize the importance of our trail network and that it's
yeah.
up to every one of us to help preserve it.
Yeah. Well,
Hmm.
and as you know, if a manufacturer manufactures a sled and there's no rider to buy it or to go ride it, doesn't do us any good either. And so the next piece of the puzzle is the rider, right? And so you and I are riders, everybody watching here, 99% of them are riders. Maybe we have someone that snuck in the back door that's not a snowmobiler, but they probably will be very soon if they're not already, because we're going to get them excited about snowmobiling. So
That's
let's
right.
talk about the rider's responsibility in this sense of community and what do we need to do? What do I need to do to be a responsible snowmobiler to make sure that there's longevity in this sport? Talk me through it.
I think that a lot of riders think they can answer that themselves in the sense that they know you have to obey the rules of the trail,
Amen.
be respectful. You're going to pack in what you pack out. You're not going to litter, all that stuff. You know, it's about being respectful, following the rules of the trail, being respectful to other riders,
Yeah.
and being respectful to property. Um, I think that what maybe riders don't understand is that when we all hop in the truck and we go away for the weekend and we show up in a community,
Yeah.
we don't just have to behave while we're on the trails. We need to behave when we're pulling into the gas pumps.
Yeah.
Because we get all adrenalized and we get so excited, and then we actually like butt in line at the gas pumps and like
Yeah.
block out some cars or something
Yeah.
like that. You know, that small community, they know we're in town when we're in
Yeah.
town.
And most of us, as we're doing that, we're probably wearing our favorite brand
Oh,
T-shirt or
absolutely.
hat or coat or whatever it is, right? And
Yeah,
so now I'm walking around with a Ski-doo jacket on, and
yeah,
now I'm, like you said, cutting in line at the grocery store and thinking I'm kind of just trying to be in a hurry, not
yeah.
realizing that maybe the person that I just cut in front of at the line might be the head of the Chamber of Commerce of that community, and they have
Yeah,
the ability to influence how much
could be
support their
anything.
community has for allowing snowmobile access in and around their community, right?
Yeah.
People, you're right. People don't think about that kind of thing.
We
And
could be
the,
going into a restaurant, and we have all our gear and we're bulky and we could bump someone out of the way just because we don't see because we have our
yep,
bulky gear on.
yeah,
We could be in a restaurant, we could be all loud and rowdy because we've been on a snowmobile all day and it's just
having
loud.
fun. It's what we do.
But it comes down to being respectful on that level.
Yeah,
Um, these communities are small.
yep,
It's very rare we go to a big community to
yeah,
snowmobile. So, you know, it's they're landowners, there's business owners, there's
yeah,
friends of landowners, everybody's everywhere. So
yeah,
it's just important that we're respectful right down to the little bit of it.
yeah. Well, think
Hmm.
about this for a minute. Like, let's go, still with the rider here, but this idea, like I said, things that people don't always think of is think about what's the headline in the newspaper or on the news story in the 5 o'clock news at night, right? Like, if snowmobilers are going to be in the news, what's it going to be for? Think about that for a minute, right? Is it going to be for what we typically hear, which is drunk snowmobiler killed in accident, last night type of thing, right? Are people drinking and riding and doing excessive speed and causing accidents, hurting themselves, heaven forbid, killing themselves or somebody else on the trail? That stuff's going to make headline news. And again, we are representing the sport for good or for bad, right? And whatever we do. Does the news headline say community snowmobile club comes together and cleans city park? I mean, is that the headline we want to have on the thing? Of course we do, right? Those are the things
Yeah.
that we can do. So as a snowmobile club, there's things we should be thinking about in the community. And frankly, even as I'm saying it out loud, I'm realizing like, wow, John, I'm a president of a snowmobile club these days, and there's some of these things. Even as I'm saying them out loud, I'm like, our club could do a better job of some of that stuff too. Like maybe we do instead of just worry about snowmobile trail cleanup all the time. Maybe we go around and we pick a city park in an area and we make a kind of make it known that the snowmobile club is the one going and doing that. So that might be a brilliant idea actually as we say it out loud. So
Yeah, and you know, just even as snowmobilers, we've run into situations before where we're snowmobiling and a car's stuck on the road or a driveway or an access
amen.
somewhere,
Yep.
and we help push them out.
Yeah.
And wouldn't you know it, it's the person that owns the property that we're on that we're
Yeah.
helping out.
Yep.
You know, and they're thanking us, and meanwhile we're thanking them just for
Yeah.
giving us their property to ride on.
Yep.
But we're fortunate too in the sense that there are a lot of charities out there, like Pink Ribbon Riders and
Yeah.
Kelly Shires, and there's a lot of runs out there that are charity, and that helps gets us in the news too, where it's
Absolutely.
not the incidences that we don't want to talk about.
Absolutely. All right, but
Hmm.
we all own it. So anything else? I'm looking through the notes here, and I'm thinking like other than volunteering, joining a club. I mean, we've kind of mentioned all those things. But as riders, I think, something like joining a club, a couple notes I'll add there is that, you know, sometimes I think we think joining a club is just for me, like, what am I going to get out of it, right? They don't think about it that way. But the reality is by joining a club, it may sound silly, but you now are one more person that can be listed in an overall group of, of the community saying, hey, there's X amount of thousands of snowmobilers that are all members of active clubs that are out there doing these positive things for the community. And when your local club, your local state association, when ISMA or somebody goes to, their Congress to pass laws that help us continue to maintain access, whether it be land or trail access, your number on that list, you being a person on that list of things, makes a big difference. Because if we got 100 people on a list versus 10,000 people on a list, every person we add to that list makes a significant difference in getting traction around some of these things we're trying to make sure helps the community stay, go the right direction for snowmobiling.
Absolutely. And even on a smaller scale, your name being on that list and you showing up for that meeting, through word of mouth within that community, people know who's part of the snowmobile club. And when we do our barbecues or whatever we do, that group gets bigger. And, maybe snowmobilers aren't so bad because we know these people that are doing it and contributing back to the community. So
yep.
It's
100%.
important.
Cool. Mm-hmm. Anything else around riders? I think otherwise we're ready to shift to the next category.
Yeah.
Which we mentioned it here, like as an individual rider, we should join a club. But now that I'm part of a club, what is it that the clubs should be thinking about? Like, how do the clubs become part of this sense of community that you're talking about? So,
well, and the neat thing about clubs, if no one here's ever been in a club before, is you have all sorts of people in this club. You have retired teachers, you have arborists, you have police officers, anyone's in this club. And a lot of these people ride, but a lot of them don't too. They're there just to make a difference and contribute. And as they age, I've also noticed that a lot of these people don't ride anymore. They're just there to work on our trails with us.
Yeah. Do you mind if I go a little bit deep on that topic specifically? Is that okay? Here's what I've witnessed, and I think something that is important to be called out, right, is the original snowmobile clubs, speaking mostly for the United States, but I'm feeling like it's probably a very similar date range in Canada as well. Correct me if I'm wrong. But it was like the mid to late 60s, early 70s is kind of when the original boom of snowmobiling became a thing, where there was many, many, many manufacturers. The trail systems were being established. Most of our clubs are being established, the ones that have been around a long time. Like our club, I think, was 1968 or 74, like was the year that our club was founded originally. And here's this thing that I think most people who join a club nowadays aren't conscious of, is the idea that the people who maybe now are retired age and maybe aren't actively snowmobiling as much as they used to, they're the ones who legitimately started this entire thing and this entire sport of snowmobiling that we know today, right? Frankly, the very first snowmobiles, before there was established trails and all these different things, like what did people do? They rode them around their local lake or their farm field or whatever, or that kind of thing. But there wasn't these networks of trails or access to like backcountry riding like there is today. And so the respect and heritage that we owe to these founding members of these clubs is just simply amazing. And I want you to think about it this way, is that it's their babies. Like, think about it. Like, they created this, they started it, and they had a lot of traction with it for a lot of years. And just as the generations have come and gone, what has happened then is there's this disconnection from what it's taken to create it, right? And so me, born in 74 and, I'm almost 50 years old, 49 years old, like, I wasn't there when it began. I was just a little baby, right, type of thing. And so, 10, 15, 20 years later, when I got into snowmobiling, it was already established. And so even my generation and anybody younger than me, their likelihood of them really truly understanding of what it took to get this sport started is really not there. And so I guess when you see someone who maybe is 70, some of them 80 years old, still actively part of the club, and them being very passionate about kind of the way things have been and how they're doing it, it's because it's kind of their baby. It would be like, if, I've got two kids, and it's like, like those are things that are important to me, right? And like I want my kids to be successful, and I want them to grow up and be productive adults. And so the snowmobile clubs are kind of their kids for them. And there's a lot of passion there. And I just think as a younger generation, again, my generation, your generation, anybody younger than us, it really comes down to like, let's really be thoughtful about honoring and respecting that group of people who really started this, and listen to them. Maybe we got new fresh ideas, but let's also be very respectful of how we got there in the first place. So it's a balance for sure. Anything you want to add to that?
Exactly. And like they've been there since the beginning, or they've been there for the long haul. They've
Yep.
seen a lot of people come and go. Um, like if you have young kids, you might join the snowmobile club, but life situations change and you might fall
Yeah.
out of the club again
Yep.
and then come back again later. So they've seen a lot of people come and go. And sometimes people reach out, they want to help with the trails. Oh, well, we're not doing any trail maintenance for a couple of weeks, and then we never see those people again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the number one way to help out and get involved with your club, if there's not an actual working bee going on that you know about, is just to start showing up for meetings.
Yeah. Being
You
present
know,
makes a big difference. I mean, as a club president, I can tell you, it's noticeable to me when consistently month after month I see the same face. You're right.
exactly.
There's some
And they
people we
start to
might
get
see one meeting a year, two meetings a year, maybe, great. We see them on the mountain, great. But when someone shows up consistently at a meeting, that really stands out to someone like myself or yourself who's really active in these clubs.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, no, it
And
means a whole lot just to start showing up. And then the other thing that you just said was it's like the younger generation doesn't understand what it takes to
mhm.
start making it happen. And that's where I would like to see more youth programs
Yeah.
done on like a snowmobile club level.
Yep.
It would be really great to see more of that. We don't really have that much going on. In the
Yeah.
state of Wisconsin, they have something called the Chaos Kids. It's
hmm
kids and adults on snowmobiles. It's actually this.
Oh, so that's very cool.
um, and that is fantastic. These kids are involved in everything. They have like a tier network of hierarchy within their association, and they send kids to ISMA every year, to the International Snowmobile
That's
Manufacturers
amazing.
Association, everything like that. So they are being raised to understand what it does take
Yeah.
to make the whole snowmobile industry come together.
Yeah.
And yeah, I wish
So
I wish we had more local clubs that would take something like that on.
yeah, no, I agreed 100%. And there was one person in Minnesota that I had interviewed a couple years back on the show. At the time, I think he was maybe 14 or 15 years old. He's obviously grown since then. But he is in his kind of stepdad. Ended up doing a youth snowmobile club in their community around the Brainerd Lakes area where I grew up, and we actually highlighted that on the show here a few years ago, and it was a great opportunity. And again, it's
Yeah,
what happens though is those kids are 12, 13, 14, 15, and before you know it, now they're 18, 19, 20, and they're just part of a regular
exactly.
club. And
Yeah,
unless someone is carrying that torch on and keeping that next younger generation moving in, it's easy to come and go again, right? And so how do we make it sustainable? It's something we should all be thinking about.
hard.
So
And during COVID, something we started to see was all the snowmobile safety courses
yeah,
went online,
yeah,
so they're not even in person anymore.
yeah. Yeah,
I
something
feel
else
like
with the
that's a great loss.
Yeah, something else with the clubs that I think is worth calling out again because we have this kind of I don't want to call it a divided audience, but we have two audiences. We have kind of the mountain riding community and the trail riding
Mhm.
community, and we get a lot of both here. And I would tell you, having done both, there's some very big differences in where we ride, how we ride, whether it's public land versus private land. And I'll touch on this quick and then I'll tee it up to you. Is, in the Western United States, and maybe British Columbia is the same way, I think it might be, but you can correct me if I'm wrong, is it's mostly state and federal lands, maybe like logging company lands, Forest Service lands, different things like that, that we get access to go ride, right? That's very, very different than where I grew up in Minnesota, where in the Midwest, 80 to 90% of the trails that we rode on crossed at least partially, if not mostly, on private land that there was like easements on, permissions on from landowners to be able to do that. So you obviously being in that kind of a trail network, can you elaborate on that and talk about what it takes to keep those trails open on private land?
Yeah, so within Ontario, we have 30,000 kilometers of trails. So I think that's just under 20,000 miles.
Okay.
Guess how
Sounds
many
about right.
landowners, private landowners we negotiate with?
Oh, I could guess. Do you want me to guess?
Yeah,
So you said how many miles? 20,000 miles roughly. I
probably
would
just under 20,000.
I
Yeah,
would guess there's probably no less than 8 to 10,000 landowners, maybe more.
18,000, more than
18,000.
18,000 private landowners.
Yeah, yeah. I was
Yeah.
gonna guess high, and I thought, well, maybe not that many. But yeah, I was trying to be a little conservative in my
Crazy.
guess.
And these poor snowmobile clubs, you know, they're negotiating land across, everybody's property, and
Yeah,
it's just unbelievable. And if we lose a couple 100 feet of
yeah.
trail access, sometimes that means the difference of having to go around an entire lake, like
Well,
because we can't get to the lake to cross the lake.
yeah, and you and I have both seen this happen where we have lost access to trails because of things like a landowner change or something maybe disruptive that a rider has done. Can you list a couple of the things that disruptive riders have caused that have created hard feelings with landowners that have caused trails to shut down?
So much. So I think the number one would be trespassing going off the trail.
Yep.
I think number two would probably be noise, with pipes and mufflers and cans and stuff. Um, and then just in general, just being plain disrespectful. Like next time that you're snowmobiling and someone's walking their dog on the trail or cross country skiing, yeah, they're not really allowed to do that. That is trespassing. But us yelling at them might not be a good idea because
Yeah.
that's probably a landowner.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, for
It's
sure.
and I've been on both ends of that. I've been in a group of people and come across somebody, a group cross country skiing, and we're just mad at them.
Yeah.
And then when you get home and think about it, going, I bet you that was a landowner.
Yeah. You know what my favorite cross country skiing story was where I interacted with a cross country skier? Not my favorite from a standpoint of what happened, but the end result of what happened is there's one of our, because it's in state land here, but there was a cross country ski trail right adjacent to the snowmobile trail. And as I rolled up with my group behind me, we had a kind of a big riding group and we rolled up. I noticed that there was a lady who was not on her skis. She had fallen over and appeared to be struggling to get up. And so I literally pulled up. I mean, the trails are literally side by side, and there's just a berm in the middle beside them. And so I literally stopped, got off my sled, walked over to her and says, "Oh my gosh, can I help you?" Right? And she looked at me in the
Yeah,
eyes and goes, "Yes,
right.
please." And so she was an older lady, it turned out. I didn't know until I got closer, but she was an older lady who couldn't get up on her own. And so I literally like hoisted her up and got her up on her feet. And she was so grateful. She almost had tears in her eyes.
Yeah.
Those are the kind of interactions that you want to hear about in the news later. Not that someone almost ran over somebody's dog or something like that, you know?
Exactly it. That's exactly it. So now whenever I see somebody walking on the trails or whatever, I stop and I talk to them instead and thank them, and or at least find out why they're on the trail. Because if they're not the landowner, then they need to know that they can't be there. But yeah, like I thank them. And it also reminds me of another story. What you just said
Yeah, yeah.
is I had friends come by my house one night. They weren't coming to see me. They were on the trail and they found a small dog on the trail,
Oh my
like a
gosh.
small dog. And they rounded it out and they put it in their coat, and then they came to my house and we tried to find the owner for it. But like, just be a good snowmobiler, like just be a good neighbor. That's all it takes.
Yep, absolutely,
So
absolutely.
yeah.
Awesome. So let's we've kind of dabbled in it a little bit already as far as the interactions with these landowners,
Hmm.
but the next category of group that we have is the landowners themselves. And so
Hmm.
talk us through a little bit about from your perspective on this sense of community. And I think some of it might be we've kind of dabbled in it already a little bit here, but like is there anything else you want to talk about around, you know, how the landowners fit into this sense of community around making the snowmobile snowmobiling sport of snowmobiling like successful. So
Yeah, so I think for sure it goes back to when communities were smaller and people weren't traveling as much to snowmobile.
yeah.
Back in those days, it was just everybody and their neighbor was snowmobiling,
Yep.
and we're all snowmobiling on each other's property. And the trails went through there, but it was all give and take through the whole community. But now our communities are a little bit bigger, and not all our landowners snowmobile or know someone that's just snowmobiling, so they
Yeah.
don't know who's on their trails. They're worried about the noise. They're worried about the trespassing. They're worried about liability because they just don't know, even though the trail pass is supposed to protect them.
Yep.
Safety, everything. So with landowners, it's just such a fragile thing. Like we really need to appreciate them. They don't owe us anything,
Yeah.
and we need to let them know how grateful we really are for using their trails.
Yeah. And it's
I find
it's
it difficult in Ontario because we used to really have perks for landowners, but over the years that's kind of gone away.
Yeah.
Now, if we're lucky, we might have a barbecue we invite them to at the end of a year.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And I can't reiterate enough, especially in like the trail networks, like you're talking about in your area, as well as what I saw in the Midwest. One single upset landowner can cause huge devastation to an entire network, because it could be one of the most specific corridors around that can't be rerouted. Like sometimes you get lucky and there's a neighboring piece of property that you can renegotiate, someone to renegotiate, to like, let's go a half mile out of the way. It's going to cause a lot of work and pain and effort to go clear that trail and do those things too. That's best case scenario. Worst case scenario is you now are maybe landlocked and you have a river on one side that's open water, and on the other side there's a city that's inside the city limits, and this is the only neighborhood that is going to connect thousands of miles of trails, if not hundreds of miles of trails, right? And so it can be super devastating. And so I think the responsibility that we all have is to represent the sport the right way. And again, it goes everything from simple things of speeding, reckless riding, trespassing, loud pipes, just anything that would be not welcomed in that local community. And it's that simple. Like I think of that cross country skiing story, like there's a speed limit in that specific area. And what I go out of my way to do with our group is like, let's slow way down, keep the noise level down, wave at everybody. Let's just represent our sport of snowmobiling in a way that supports their fun of cross country skiing. Because here's the thing is like, it's a small stretch of trail that's maybe about a half mile to a mile long. So give or take about a kilometer, right? Of trails that are side by side each other, right? All that I have to do is to drive at a slow, moderate speed, keep the noise down, not act like I'm harassing people in any way, shape, or form. And then once I'm beyond that first kilometer, that first mile, guess what? I've got all that backcountry. I can go back there, and if I want to go and climb a hill or something and hit my pipe louder or whatever I want to do, not likely I'm going to be upsetting anybody out in the middle of the backcountry. Different in a trail system, but sometimes you have that same scenario where like through town you slow down, through people's neighborhoods and houses you slow down. So
yeah, we don't want our communities to be like, oh, it's snowmobile season. Our town's about to go crazy with snowmobilers. Oh, good grief.
Yeah.
We want them the other way around. Oh, the snowmobilers will be here soon. The town's going to be hopping. Life is good, and they're great people, and they're so courteous, and they help us out every way they can.
Yeah,
that's the reputation that we need to have out there. So unfortunately, it just takes one bad apple to start ruining it for us all. But yeah.
And that leads into kind of our next category, which we've kind of dabbled on. A lot of these things kind of are very interwoven with each other, and no different here is trail access and land access. What's your additional thoughts you want to go there? So,
if 1,000 people stay on the trail and go where they're supposed to go, and one person makes tracks off that trail, one person, those tracks are there. Sometimes around here, those tracks are there for another month.
Yep, that's awesome.
And that's what people see.
Yeah. So MJ, I apologize, but I just got distracted seeing someone's name, and there's a thing. So their comment is, MJ, see you in Novi, right? That's Novi, right? Novi. It's John Prusak. So I recognize that name. So John, hey, thanks for watching the show tonight. I don't know that I've ever seen you in the audience here watching before, and so appreciate you watching tonight. And invitation to you, John, if you ever want to come on the show and be a guest, I'd love to have you on too, because I know you're pretty influential in the sport as well, and would love to kind of get your story out there to everybody else too. So if you can do that, hit me up after the show. I'd love to be able to set that up. So
John from Snowmobiling.
Yep, absolutely. Awesome. Yeah, one of my favorite magazines of all times. When I was in the Midwest, I was a subscriber all the time, and here we go. Back into the world of land access and trail access. So anything you want to add that we haven't already touched on?
I honestly, we're surely missing a whole bunch, but it just can't be said enough that when we roll into these communities, we have to be as respectful as possible. We have to be acting like we're at our grandma's birthday party on December 15th, and we want a new snowmobile for Christmas.
Amen.
That's how we have to be acting.
Yeah, pretend grandma's watching, right?
Yeah, grandma's watching.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think
Yeah.
from a trail access standpoint, I think we've covered most of it there. There's a couple of little things I'll touch on from a land access standpoint, kind of in Western riding, and
Mhm.
there's a couple of unique things that happen out here that might be the case there too. Generally trespassing is the
Yeah.
same topic, but out here we have things like in Canada specifically is in British Columbia is caribou closures, right? So there's wild animal caribou closure areas that sometimes of the season, like I can't remember the specific areas in, but I know like there's maps that are out there for a specific area, maybe around Revelstoke, British Columbia, Sicamous area, even up in Valmont, British Columbia, those areas I've ridden, different times of the year, early season, late season, those areas may be open for riding part of the season,
Yeah.
and then mid-season they close down, or vice versa, right? Is sometimes what happens. But, because there's a timed land access, it's not always super obvious to people, and they may have seen tracks in there from a week ago when it was legal, but now it's not. And so it's up to us to really
It's
understand
hard. Yeah.
what we need to do to pay attention. And the other thing we run into out here in Washington State and across the entire Western United States and Canada is just wilderness areas. I don't know if they're called the same thing up in Canada or not, but down here we call them wilderness areas. They're basically non-motorized areas that have been restricted. And I know
Mhm.
some people kind of get this chip on their shoulder that they're like, who are they to tell me I can't ride these areas? Screw them. I've heard people talk like that, and then they just
Yeah.
go zinging and ride in those areas and then come out. And guess what? 90+% of the time, they're never going to get caught. But guess what? Now there's tracks in there. Now we're going into areas that we're not allowed to go in. And it's just adding fuel to the fire to go shut down even more areas. And so
Mhm.
now, guess what? Maybe because you rode in that wilderness area adjacent to an area that we're supposed to be riding in, maybe that area we're supposed to be riding in gets shut down also, and that whole snow park gets shut down. So your complete access gets to that area gets completely shut down, just
Mhm.
because, frankly, that person's too arrogant to follow the rules and to be responsible. So
And that's, I think, where it's important, where we see groups like Outdoor Alliance and the Blue Ribbon Coalition coming in and helping arrange for people to group together against all these causes and educate us.
yep,
Now,
absolutely.
something that I ran into in the last couple years that I've started seeing more of is turtles. Access has been taken away from us for turtles.
This is the part where I put my face in my palm and do the face palm and go like, you got to be kidding me. But yeah, there's
No,
that. No, no,
and
I know it's true and I know it's real, but like that's the thing is, I think sometimes, and I'm not saying this is the case this time, but there's times where I think some of these like anti-motorized groups, they go
crazy.
find any and all reasons they can to be able to lock us out of an area, and they get super creative. And frankly, a lot of times they have money behind it and groups backing it
Yeah.
and stuff too. And so whether it be turtles, whether it be like a spotted owl, or maybe it's some salamander, or who knows what it
Interesting.
is.
Yeah, there's always going to be something.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's just a reminder to us to be respectful to our environment, no matter what, because we don't know what's out there that we might be threatening.
Nope, absolutely true.
But no
Absolutely
one's
true.
identified that.
Wow. So as we've walked through all of these different groups and categories, I'm going to kind of recap them one more time. We've talked about this entire community, things like manufacturers. We've talked about the riders ourselves, right? We've got clubs. We've got dealers and dealer network. Did we touch on dealers or did I skip over dealers? I
We
might have
didn't
skipped over.
touch on dealers very much.
Let's go back to dealers. I'm sorry about that. I could have swore we hit that, but then I look back at my notes and I'm
Yeah,
like,
and
maybe we
the
missed
neat
dealer.
thing here is if you go back in time again to when our communities were smaller, we had
Yeah.
more. Well, we probably had the same number of snowmobile clubs, but we pretty much had like a dealer in every corner.
Yeah.
Like every snowmobile club region probably had two or three dealers.
True.
And now when I look at all the dealers in my area, or sorry, all the snowmobile clubs in my area, there's maybe half a dozen or more. There's one dealer. It's interesting. Like I would like to see more dealer presence at the snowmobile clubs.
Yeah.
But when I start running that math, I'm like, do they pick one club? Do they? I don't know how it works.
Yeah.
And as our dealers are more centralized and carrying more products, they're not always somewhere where a trail is coming right to their door anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Out in
Something
Washington
to
for sure.
watch.
Like yeah, like for us out here because of like where we live, most of the population lives, there's not snow. We actually have to drive up
Mhm.
into the mountains to get access to snow.
Yeah.
Not too different in British Columbia. A lot of that same thing happens up there as well too, where you have to drive to a trailhead to go ride. Where I remember living in Minnesota, literally I could open my garage door, pull my snowmobile out, go ride all day, hit the
Yeah.
trails, come back down. I mean, there might be like a quarter of a mile where like you have to go down a neighborhood street on the side of the street, but it was legal to do so just to get
Yeah.
access to the trail, and then you could ride
Exactly.
all day. Like I think Minnesota, there was 22,000 miles worth of trails just in our state alone, and it was all interconnected. And so I could go out for as many days as I wanted to, ride, and then come back home and never have to trailer hardly anywhere unless I, really wanted to. So
So I do see our dealers being very active in the community. They're sponsoring a lot of charity events. A lot of them are holding their open houses right now. And
yep,
when they hold their open houses, they're having snowmobile clubs come in and set up tables and information and safety. But it does kind of concern me that we don't have the dealer to snowmobile club racial that we used to have.
yeah,
And the other great thing about the dealers is that's where the free avalanche training has been coming through,
yep,
is at the dealer level. So
yeah,
that's nice.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, I
But
think as a community, us supporting dealers is critical to the success, because I think it's tempting to do it. There's a couple of scenarios I'll talk about. When you think about
mhm,
buying your machine, I think a lot of people have a tendency to just go down and chase down the best price, and they're willing to go drive 100, if not 1,000 miles, to go get the best price and save $500 or $1,000, right? The reality is that unless that local dealer near you is supported and alive, like, where are you going to bring your machine when it needs to be serviced? Are you going to drive it that 1,000 miles or that 500 miles back to go get your machine serviced when you need to? If, for
yeah.
heaven bid, there's a warranty repair that needs to be done or something like that. And then what about, parts and accessories and all those things, right? Like, we're getting to this day and age where people tend to buy a lot of things online, right? And I think for something like a sport like snowmobiling, I think it's critical that as much as possible we support our local retailers, right, which are our dealers, and buying your clothing, your riding gear, all your accessories, your oil. I mean, I literally, it's like I literally dropped $500 just in an injection oil 2 days ago when at my
And you're
dealer's
just
open
thinking
house.
about
Yeah, it
it.
was two 5 gallon jugs, because like I do a lot of riding, my wife does a lot of riding. We may not go through all 10 gallons in one season, but we'll probably go through one and a half of those, type of thing. And I want to make sure I've got enough for the season. But like, yeah, it's but again, we're supporting that local dealer where they're at, in their open house, and they literally put on a party and fed us at the open house down here at Clem's Enumclaw Power Sports. Right above me is their logo. So Clem's Enumclaw Power
Yeah.
Sports. We just had their open house a couple of nights, or Friday night. So
It's
two
like
nights ago.
open house season right now. It's
Yeah.
awesome. It's
Yep.
so awesome to see everybody getting geared up for winter. It's
Yep.
just, I love it. Like, and they're bringing in charities when they do it. It's
Yeah.
it's great.
Absolutely.
Like, they're so involved. But yeah, and the other thing that really amazes me is that when I do go up north to ride, I can ride from my back door, but when I go up north to ride, we're just tourists like everybody else.
Yeah.
When we need service from one of those dealers, like
Oh
like
yeah.
service to keep us going that day and that
Yep.
night, they always step up and deliver.
It's awesome.
Like like that must happen to them like nonstop.
Oh, I know, right? Yeah.
And they understand. Just keep everybody going. Keep
Yep.
them all
Yeah.
happy
It goes
and
both
they'll
ways.
step up and do
Dealers have
it.
to go
Hmm.
out of the way to keep the customers happy, but I think as a customer, as a rider, I think it's up to us to make sure that we keep our dealers around too by supporting them locally as much as we can. So
Yeah, yeah.
very good. And then we had landowners and trail eyes. So we've kind of talked through all the categories that we've talked about.
We have,
Is there anything
yeah.
else that has popped into your head along the way that you want to make sure we touch on before we wrap this up?
I don't know. In general, it's just a great sport. Like, there's so much camaraderie out there, right?
Yeah.
Like, I've had homeowners help me. I've helped homeowners and
Yeah.
landowners before,
Yeah.
and other snowmobilers. Like,
Yeah.
when will you ever come across a snowmobiler that won't help you with a belt or give you fuel or a tow?
Oh,
Like, it's
exactly.
always going to happen. Everybody's always out there helping each other out.
Yeah.
So,
Or if people
yeah,
are stuck in the snow park or in the parking lot somewhere with the hotel or whatever.
yeah.
Um, you know,
We were at a hotel once, and we were just asking where the nearest store might be. Maybe we wanted to buy some beer. And he's like, "Oh, that's my car running out front. Take it." And we're like, "Oh, can we have the keys?" And he's like, "Yep, they're in it." So we just hopped in the Escalade and went to the other side of town and picked up what we needed.
oh, that's hilarious. That's
But
awesome.
like, that's what it's like. Like,
Yeah.
and that's not the first time someone's given us their vehicle before. We've broken down before and been stuck in a bar just trying to figure out what the plan is.
Yeah.
Some guy gave us his truck to put the snowmobile in the back, and
That's amazing.
the only problem with that is the next day when we brought the truck back, we didn't know who to take it to. The
Uh-oh.
bar was closed.
Oops.
It's like, oh.
Well, we got this extra truck now, so
Yeah.
I'm sure it all got sorted out at some point. So
Yeah, always does. Yeah.
very good,
But yeah.
very good. So MJ, obviously you're a Ski-doo ambassador, and if people go to the Ski-doo website, they can read your bio, which I've done today too. A lot of good information in there about that. But how can people either engage with you, follow you? You know, if somebody needs vintage Ski-doo parts, like give us some of the ways that
Oh,
people can either follow you or reach out to you if they find it necessary.
absolutely. So on Instagram, I'm Muskoka MJ. So feel free to reach out to me on Instagram anytime. And I have an ambassador page on Facebook, MJ Thompson.
There you go.
So you can reach out that way as well. And if you don't know my business is Fullerton's PAC. It's a distribution warehouse for obsolete BRP parts.
Very cool.
And yeah, just reach out to me and I'll give you my contact info for that too.
Very good, very good. So
Yeah.
Facebook Messenger through your athlete page, they can reach out to you there as well too.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I don't think we have any questions here, but we got a lot of great comments. So I encourage you, MJ, to after the show's done, it's late for you. You guys are, geez, it's probably 11 o'clock at night your time right about now, getting pretty close.
Yeah.
Yeah, think about that. That's how cool the snowmobile community is that we can sit here on a live broadcast and just shoot the breeze about snowmobiles for an entire hour, and it feels like 5 minutes went by, right?
Yeah, it doesn't feel like anything.
Yep. Awesome, awesome. Well, I hope I'm in bed by 11 o'clock. So you're a trooper for being up this late. Thank you for being with us tonight. So everybody, if you haven't already, go into the show, share the show out, and you're going to win a saw from Mountain Lab. What else you got there? What's this?
Some placemats. You see it? Learn
Yeah.
from the experts. Join a snowmobile club.
Oh, very nice.
What's this one say?
It says,
Follow a leader. Stay on marked trails.
there you go.
These are just these are vintage.
Oh, some vintage
placements.
posters.
Yeah. Use common sense. Protect your environment.
Very good, very good. Awesome. Well, I was...
Right.
Cool poster. As you're wrapping those up, I'll tell everybody what I usually do when I wrap up a show here, which is everybody, if you don't already know what Live Large stands for, I tell everybody it's live life to the fullest, make the most of every day, and make a difference to others. And as you guys have witnessed here tonight, MJ is doing all of those things. She's living her best life while helping other people around her. So God bless all of you. MJ, God bless you, and have an amazing night. You can hang on for a minute. Everybody else, we'll talk to you again next time. Bye.